Isn't it interesting that we like we have TV shows and complete careers and industries built around going into the Egyptian, tunnels, or we find caves with scratchings on them, and we're like, oh my God, we discovered, and look at what it tells us about our ancestors and everything. And that, like, we can, oh my God, that's such a big thing. But in real time, as you and I are creators, people are like, oh, you're an actor? There's a million of those. Oh, you're a writer? You're a director? Why don't you get a real job? It's like, we're the documentarians of human history.
An influencer did a podcast episode where she talked about her trip to Sedona, and she made a point to talk about the reading that she had with me and how amazing it was. And you can connect with him at Talk to My Angels.
Oh, wow.
Instagram.
That's amazing.
So all of a sudden, all these people started booking me and following me on Instagram and all that. So that was the third day into my surrender practice, and that episode had come out, and people have been booked, like people that I don't know that are new clients have been booking me, and a bunch of them are coming to my meditation today. So now they're going to be in my.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
It's funny because I've been doing kind of the same thing in a different approach. First thing I want to say, because I'm recording this and I feel like either you or I could use this talk. I think it's good. But what was I going to say? You talk about like you would feel the alignment, and you used to, but I also think about when I first started to drive, like I was, checking all the mirrors and stuff, and now I can drive all the way across town and not like be present. So I would say consider that you've done it so much now that it's automatic, and that it, just because you don't feel it as intensely doesn't mean you're not in alignment with it.
For sure.
But the other thing, so I don't know, like this came to me to share with you as you're talking about that, because it reminded me. But I was listening to, I don't know, man, I listen to so many podcasts and lectures and things like that, but I was recently listening to this one. I want to give them credit, but I can't remember who it is. But they were talking about why we should, like, why it was basically why mantras don't work, because our subconscious mind, like, we can sit there and say, I'm a millionaire, or whatever. It like makes us feel good, but it doesn't get into the subconscious mind to really believe it. Even if you don't hear that voice, it goes, no, you're not. Like, and even if you don't hear that, it's saying, no, here's the reality. But he said, why the reason you should be, he does 10 minutes of gratitudes every morning. And he sits there and, like, not just says, I'm grateful for this, it like really like feels grateful. He said, because what it does neurologically is it takes the brain, when you focus on what the things you're grateful for, like, I'm grateful I have fresh water, I'm grateful I have this computer and internet access, and and I have a comfortable bed or whatever, and you just go through the basic things, it tells your brain that you're in a safe environment, and so it kicks off out of fight or flight mode, and then when it's free from that, it starts looking for possibilities. Whereas when it's in fight or flight mode, which is its default by nature, by design, you wake up in the morning, the first thing when it comes online, it's looking for problems, not because you're ungrateful or whatever, but because it's looking for the saber-toothed tiger. But he's like, if you spend 5 to 10 minutes just getting in gratitude, it tells that lizard brain that everything's okay and it's a safe environment. And then it stops looking for problems and it starts looking for possibilities. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that for me made sense in a woo-woo type thing, where it's like, you know, it's kind of like the Secret, which started me on my path. But the more I talk to people about The Secret, they all like, people are starting to reflect back what I always felt about it. They were like, you can manifest anything, but we're not going to tell you how. You know, it's just like, just wish for it and it'll show up. But it's like, that's like, no, it's actually, it's not about you necessarily being grateful for this cup of water, but it's about letting that instinctual thing, let it know that it's in a safe environment. So
Yes.
I thought that was cool. But yeah, so like the same things happen for me. I've been doing this course of releasing trauma and healing childhood trauma and things like that, and actually getting to a place of worthiness, like feeling worth, like it's like, I know I can have this because Seph has it. I know I can have it because this person has it, and they're not as more talented or smarter than me, or they don't work harder, but they get it and it comes to them. And it's like, why is that? It's like, well, the worthiness behind it. So anyways, in doing that, it's been tough because it's like all this stuff is coming up, and it's been like a really hard couple weeks for me, just emotionally and more mentally, but you know, emotionally they kind of go hand in hand. But it's crazy because it's like, you know, they're like, well, you're going to start to see things reveal as you start to shift your, you know, and this is all subconscious work, by the way. It's you do these,
Yes.
you do some journaling, you go into these guided meditations that use like theta or whatever to get you into the subconscious, and then you go through these exercises and then you journal again. And like, number one, everybody around me, and it was funny because I started to notice this, and then I listened to one of the podcasts and one of the guests talked about this. She's like, I knew my manifestations were right around the corner because everyone around me her dream was to have a book publishing deal. And she's like, at one point, everybody around me in my community was getting book deals. She's like, so I was surrounded, like everybody. And I was like, and I started thinking about it, I'm like, everybody around me is like booking big jobs. They're getting interviewed on CNN for projects they did. I mean, everybody around me is just killing it. And I'm like, oh, it's like, it's all around me. And then
in your energy field.
Yeah. I mean, it's
in your awareness directly.
Right. And the other thing of that is like, I'm excited about it. Like in the past, I've always been very supportive of people's success and things like that. But there's always been a bit of hint of, where's mine? Sometimes jealousy. Yeah. Sometimes like, well, they haven't put in as much time as me, and I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but like, yeah, well, I guess that's where's mine. So yeah. But now I'm just like happy for everybody. I'm like, that's awesome, but without attachment of like, well, where's mine type thing. So, but it's interesting. Joanna and I were watching, I just kicked on the other night. I couldn't sleep. Like I wasn't tired. And so I turned on this documentary about Puff Daddy. And he did this, of
all the random things, you gotta laugh.
Well, yeah, I mean, it popped up, and you know, that was a massive, in that music and everything was a massive influence because, you know, I was a teenager at the time. But you know, he's always interested me. He's just interests me for different reasons. But anyway, but it's about, he put together a 20-year reunion tour with all the artists that he produced under his record label. And I think this is like in 2019 or something like that. It had to have been pre-pandemic or whatever, but they document the whole thing. And I was just watching it and just seeing how he approached and his mindset and everything. And with what I'm going through and going, oh, that's what it looks like to be, to you know, really be in your worth and go, I can achieve anything, no, even if it hasn't been done before. And I'm like, as I'm watching it, I'm just processing all this in my mind. And then I was supposed to meet up with a friend last night for drinks and catch up. And initially it was like, well, let's get together and let's just go down Santa Monica Boulevard and like bar hop. And I was like, okay, like I wasn't really, honestly, I really just wanted to stay home in bed. Like I just so unmotivated to do anything at this point. But I was like, I committed to it and I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Well, then when he checked in with me to confirm that we're getting together yesterday, he's like, hey, we're going to Beverly Hills, dress nice, like your post premiere party and stuff like that. And I was like, God damn it. I was like, I don't want to dress up and I don't want to do. And I was like, the bar crawl thing was too much for, like, just bar hopping thing was too much for me. Like, and then, and I was like, Joanna said something to me and she's like, this is what you've been calling in and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, I'll go. And I was like, but the biggest thing is I'm just allowing myself to feel whatever I'm feeling without going, I need to feel better. I need to feel happy. I'm just like, this is how I feel. I'm going to honor it. I'm going to let it process out and, let it run its course. But I was just like, yeah, I haven't put on a suit and stuff like that in a while. And I do enjoy that because just how it makes me feel. But I was just like, so I'll throw it on, but I'm just like, whatever he's getting me into, I'm going to go and I'm going to honor how I feel. If I don't want to talk to anybody, I'm not going to talk to anybody, whatever. So we end up getting together. Oh, and so then he texts me back, like, I don't know, 30 minutes later or an hour later. He's like, well, I believe in choices. He's like, so I'll give you the option. Like we could do the Beverly Hills thing, or we can just go to this local dive bar down by me. That's the other thing. I'm going all the way up into Hollywood because I'm down by the beach now. And I was like, no, like, let's do the first thing, like that, let's just follow through with that because I committed to that. I've already said yes to that. My energy's in that direction, whatever. So we end up going and he takes me to the Waldorf Astoria. And I don't know if you've been there. The new
one right there on the corner of Santa Monica Boulevard.
Right.
It looks like kind of like a ship, maybe. I don't know.
Have you been there?
I haven't been inside.
Man, it's not even about inside. You go up to the rooftop, they have a bar, and that's where it's a restaurant and there's a bar and everything. But because it's on that corner and it's rounded, it's the best view in Los Angeles. You can see in every direction. And we get there right before sunset. So you get to but it's the best view
Wow.
in LA. You haven't seen LA from that perspective because there's no other building really sitting where it sits with that view. It's beautiful. But anyway, so he and I are sitting at the bar and we're just chatting and whatever. And as we're talking, I glance up, just literally standing behind him. He's facing me. We're at the bar. He's facing me. And then just behind him, standing literally back to back, is Puff Daddy. And I'm like, I did this double take because I was just like, I literally just watched his documentary 24 hours before. Now he's like standing in front of me. And I've been in Los Angeles for 12, 13 years now. And like, I rarely run into celebrities. I do every once in a while and I'll be like, oh, that's so-and-so. But especially somebody his caliber, like the level he's at. And and it's just like I'm starting to see just everything, like even in a 24-hour, like I can watch this documentary about this individual and then here they are physically in front of me. And it was just like this.
So I'm just like bubbling with an offering here for you on this that you might actually savor. So you mentioned doing some work about freeing some subconscious energy.
Yeah.
And so
or beliefs.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So one of the methods that I use is the EFT tapping, which you probably know about.
I don't, like in one of the podcasts this girl I'm taking this course through, she had a whole thing and she talked about that, and I wrote it down to dig into it because it sounded really interesting. I don't know that much.
Great. It's very simple. So, in fact, someone on my podcast talked about when she discovered it, that she decided just to go full bore and just do the EFT tapping about everything. And what she discovered, because whatever traumas we experience or whatever false beliefs we're holding on to, they're stored as energy in our body. And so when we do the EFT tapping, what we end up doing is we end up releasing them when they come up. So we allow the emotion to come up that's associated with it. And so what you were talking about earlier about being a millionaire versus being in gratitude, the whole idea is just to be in an expansive space. As you had mentioned, getting out of the problem solving and into the widened whatever. But she talked about something that was very interesting, which is related to the fact that, we're kind of on, well, we're not kind of, we are on a collective trend of raising our vibration. So whatever is too dense for us to bring to our higher reality has to go.
Right.
And we've all been innately guided right now to find a way to release that, whatever way that might be, which it kind of, at the advent of all of this, it kind of started with people taking every situation and flipping it around and finding out what it was revealing. So, for example, I got pulled over here in Arizona to get a ticket, and the cop was like a bully. And I was bullied as a kid, and it brought up that stuff where I could feel it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I mean, I ended up getting to go to traffic school or whatever, but I attracted that in as a way of actually dealing, releasing whatever it was that was remaining about being bullied, because being bullied also is the feeling of being less than someone.
Correct.
Or being unworthy, of being unpowerful, right? And so whatever it was, it's time for that to. So she ended up talking about how when we have this on us, we're sending out a signal to bring that to us, so that it'll bring it up so that we can.
It's like a magnet attractor, right?
Right. Well, we're sending out a signal that says, please bring me some bullying, because that's going to bring up the feelings so I can heal it. But that's not normally what we do with it. Instead, we just go, that damn cop, he was such a bully, right? So then we flip this around on that. Well, so what's happened now as you're doing this, as you're releasing all this, it's what she mentioned in the interview, is that it actually takes us into deeper alignment. And so the Puff Daddy thing, and it's very similar, like I'll be having a conversation in the car, I'll be driving, and for example, somehow or another, I'll be talking about reflection or something like that. And someone will pass me like this, and they'll have a great big trailer, and it'll say reflection on it. So those kind of reverberant effects of knowing that you're creating your own reality, right? That you're literally directly creating your reality. So these sort of mirrored echo effects, and the increase of them has to do with the fact that as you're freeing all of this stuff for you, then now that conscious creator that's within you actually has more, its power is not being blocked by whatever is being worn by us. So the EFT tapping, by the way, is really easy, because you take just certain meridian points and it's so easy to remember. So there's the karate chop here. There's one on top of the head. There's one right here, 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 two of them right here, and two of them under each side here. So what happens when you do this is that you actually acknowledge, like, so if somebody comes up behind me and is tailing me, then I know that I had sent out that signal. I don't get it anymore, but I'd send out that signal because it's a form of bullying to me. So I just would sit in the car and tap. But whatever it is, when it comes up, when that emotion is live and raw, that's the time to do it. So like, if you're feeling scarcity, it'll be like, okay, I acknowledge that I didn't really want that unexpected bill, and it makes me feel powerless. But I choose to love and accept myself. And you spend a little bit more time at each point, but you do an anchor statement, which you start with, even though, and you say what it really is. Even though I feel like eating right now because I'm really stressed out.
Mm.
And that's what I usually do. And I feel defeated because I keep putting on weight. I still choose to love and accept myself. And even though I feel like I'm never going to get back in shape again, or even though I feel like I'm never going to save up enough money, it's okay, because I still choose to love and accept myself. And you spend at least 10 minutes going through all the points, but you say, even though this thing happened and it makes me feel like this, I choose to love and accept myself. And it's very powerful because it starts releasing that. And then we send out another signal.
I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to work with that. I've done some tapping in the past, but it's one of those things where it just has to become a habit. Otherwise, like, you just get so wrapped up in your day-to-day life or whatever's happening and then you get triggered and, I don't remember to do it. But
I had a guest on my podcast one time who did it in the shower, because her habit was, if she did it in the shower, then every day when she was in the shower, it triggered the habit to do the tapping.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it was one of those things where, but you could do it when it comes up, whenever something comes up.
Yeah.
Go, uh-oh, there it is.
But that also, it, what you're talking about how, like, the bullying part. So the cop shows up and is a bully and everything else. It's that's, as you said, you can look at it as like the world is, this cop's an asshole or whatever. But if you really look at it as like how you said it, which is the cop showed up to trigger you because it's still something you have to deal with. That's where, and what I've heard it for years, but just starting to click with me in the, recently, which is that the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, is like everything is happening in your favor. And it's like, we go, well, yeah, except for this, this, and this. Is like, no. It comes up to trigger you, to give you the opportunity to release it. Because like you said, like, I hear that story about the cop coming up and bullying. I'd laugh at him and be like, really? This is how you serve the public? Like, I wouldn't, like, it doesn't trigger me like it triggers you, right? But I got a ticket. I did get a ticket. We went to the beach last Friday, and it was the first time we've been to the beach and done a beach day in like 6 months or something like that. And we just got this car, and as soon as we got this car, somebody hit me in it, and then it went into the shop. It's been in the shop, and they had to redo the whole front end of it and put a new bumper on. Well, when they did it, they didn't put a license plate holder on the front. So we stuck the license plate in the front until we could get a license plate holder. But literally, like, I got the car, and then a day or two later, which the part hadn't come in yet, we go to the beach up in Malibu, and we come back to the car after having a great day. Like, I released a bunch of stuff on the beach and everything. And then I come up, and there's a $58 ticket for the license plate not being attached to the front of the bumper. And like, dude, rage. Like, I haven't felt rage like that. I was like, I'm so glad I didn't walk up sooner and catch the officer writing the ticket, because it wouldn't have gone, like, I probably would have ended up in jail, because just all this rage just came up. And I was just like, and you talk about, so it's like, I was like, I got to deal with that shit, because it, like, that was a big trigger for me and an opportunity to release that. But in the moment, as the human being going through it and the victim, where it's easy to sit there and go, why is the world so difficult? I had this thought the other day or a week ago or whatever, but it was like, we hear all the time, like, life is hard. And I've even heard it from people, just even since I had this thought, I've heard it from people that are in this world of, self-help and, and growth and all that other stuff. But people are like, yeah, life is hard. So, it's great to have these tools. And I'm just like, life isn't actually hard, right? we don't have to make sure nobody has to get up and make sure the sun works or the moon works or the earth rotates, or osmosis happens, or that the trees take in our carbon dioxide and give us like life actually isn't complicated. But as a human being, in the way our brains are like we complicate it, like because we give meaning to things, and because we get attached to things, and because of our trauma. But if you like take a step back, life isn't hard, right? It isn't. It's functioning. It just functions. Our body functions with that. Like we actually don't have to do that much stuff. If we were to take away the need for money, and like if everybody had equal amounts of resources, like let's just say, there was a world government. Not that I don't want to go down this conspiracy.
Not that world government.
Correct.
No,
but like a government,
yes, an actual society
government where it's like all resources were evenly divided and whatever, and to where whatever you wanted, if you're like, hey, I want this, it'd be like, here it is, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to leave that part of it, we would see how simple life actually is. But because we want to achieve or acquire physical things in life, and it's like a Ferrari costs this much compared to a Toyota, like even all that I've been going through for the past couple of weeks, and just even the past days, hours and days of just very fulfilled, and it's not even unhappy. It's just being unfulfilled in life in so many ways, as I've been
also feeling unsettled as well.
Unsettled, but I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm like, even as I'm feeling that, I also realize it's chemicals in my brain, and it's all these narratives and everything. But if I look outside of it, like the wind is still blowing, trees are like, life is still just happening. Like life isn't hard. At the really foundation, life isn't hard, right? And like you look at animals get up, they eat, they poop, they run around, they do, like kids, same thing. They get up, they eat, they poop, they play, they do this and go back to sleep. Like they don't overcomplicate. They don't complicate things. We complicate. We actually make life hard. And so I just had that interesting thought, and I'm like, yeah, life isn't actually hard. It's complicated for sure. It's absolutely complicated. We still can't understand how the brain works, or what consciousness is, or there's or
yeah. Well, and I shared with you in that I've been doing those channelings, right? And in one of the channelings, one of the beings said, when you go to sleep at night, you are in the most non-resistant state to what shows up in your dreams.
Yeah.
Notice how quickly it just shows up. And it said, imagine that you were to actually live in that state of non-resistance. Well, then after that, it was from that guidance that I decided to do that surrender. And then it was from doing that surrender that I attracted someone of noteworthy authorship that actually wrote a book about having an experiment with that level of surrender. Now, not that the book is the contents of the information, but it's an interesting validation, because this person is talking about how, yes, in nature, life does take care of itself through its own processes. And it does so for us as well. And it's interesting because our controlling mechanisms, or our fear-based mechanisms, actually interfere with the power that we have to create the reality that we want, which kind of brings us also into, where is it that we're suddenly innately drawn to be aware of actually clearing all of the useless stored energy within us to give us back that creative force. And that creative force is the same creative force that creates everything. And so if we're getting greater access or tapping more deeply into that creative force, I haven't got into the book yet, but the person who mentioned it said it was amazing how when he did this experiment and wrote about it, the things that just showed up in his life as a result of that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how that happens. And even thinking of a reverberant effect, it's like when you go and you line up to do something, and all of a sudden, whatever, like I started doing this with you because I'm like, okay, I should just sort of still tune into this world, even though I'm present in that other world.
Uh-huh.
And on the plane coming back, the flight attendant says, "You're an actor. I recognize you from something." I said, "I am, but you couldn't possibly recognize me from anything that I've done." He goes, "Well, you have that look." And he said,
Yeah.
"I swear I've seen you in something." And I said, "Oh yeah, but I said I'm SAG-AFTRA. I've done stuff, but nothing big enough that you would have ever seen." I said, "Which is why I find it peculiar that you recognize that, because
Right.
you couldn't possibly do it." And then I realized that this was something that was showing up on my path to give me a message. And I said, "Yeah, I'm kind of out of that world right now." He says, "Oh yeah, that's when your big break shows up, is when you do that."
Right.
And I go, "Well, that isn't that interesting." So then I landed in Miami. And when I stayed at the Airbnb, my host was a filmmaker. I walk in and I see two, well, I
I
see,
was about to say,
I always keep this on my
just
desk.
manifested some money.
I always keep this on my desk, but I see two. There must have been 5Ks or 10Ks, or
Yeah.
and I see the background. I see the lights and everything like that. He's a filmmaker, and I'm like, oh, that's very interesting how that happens, and
Yeah.
especially from that place of non-resistance. So very interesting how those pieces of the puzzle work together.
Yeah, it is. And it's the other thing, what I'm really learning, like I've intellectually understood this stuff for years, but haven't been able to figure out how to, because it's like, yeah, things have happened and opportunities have shown up and things like that. But it's to, I shouldn't say purposefully create the life you want, right? Because otherwise it's just it's rolling the dice, it's playing the lotto, it's going, well, this is what I want, I hope it shows up. And it goes back to the dogmatic, organized religion of giving your power away. And it's like, that's been my frustration, which is, yeah, I understand all this, like I understand that we create our reality and everything else, so I know all the problems and all the successes, but all the reasons I'm not moving forward in my career or financially or in my love life or whatever the category is my own doing. But how do you change that? And so it's like we're talking about, like releasing things, letting those things fit, learning how to release the trauma, so that like you talk about, is like when you're in sleep mode, there's no resistance and life is just happening, right? And so it's like doing that while you're conscious. Well, it's like, well, yeah, but you have to then turn off all those programs that are the distortion between you, the signal, and the receptor, which is the world reflecting back whatever it is you're wanting. Otherwise, it's hijack. I don't know. But it's like hijacking the signal, right, that's coming out, and piggybacking off of it and going, no, like I don't want to be tailgated, I don't want this. And it's like, oh, that's the signal it gets, because it's jumping in between you and reality, right? And so it hijacks, and that's why we keep getting it. I mean,
Mhm.
it's so fascinating, the things that have been coming up for me, um um things I haven't thought about in years, or even things I knew about but didn't realize how big of an impact they had on me. Um, and oh man, I'll share this with you. I don't know what I'm going to do with this, because this wasn't, you know,
No,
uh,
it's okay. I just,
but
yeah.
it's a good conversation. But I'll tell you, like, one of the things was, like, I was watching Stranger Things last night, and there's a scene where this big crack splits through the center of a river, and then all the water collapses in from both sides into this rut, which was like, oh shit, that's it. But I was doing an exercise, one of the exercises in the meditations, and it's like, picture you're on stage receiving an award in front of all your peers and people that you look up to and things like that. And immediately it was the Oscars, which is interesting because I let go of the Oscars years ago, once I really understood, the political and, all what it takes to actually.
Lack of meritocracy.
Well, there's a lot of factors. It just, it didn't turn out to be what I thought it represented, or, but that, I mean, that's like anything in life. You go, oh, if you're the best at something, you succeed. And it's like, there's so many factors in life. So anyways, but it was weird because like I was at the Oscars receiving an Oscar, just not for anything specific, like lead actor or lead director or anything. It was just for my body of work, for what I just had done as an artist. And I wasn't even like, oh shit, I'm getting an Oscar. Like, it didn't mean the Oscar itself didn't mean anything to me, but it's like, look out in the crowd and see all the people. And I just pictured all my peers, people that have inspired me, that I've wanted to work with, that I've enjoyed watching, that they're all giving me a standing ovation. And it's like an authentic, like they were like happy for me and proud of me. And even some were like pumping their fists, like, good job, man. Like, that thing. And some people like had tears in their eyes and stuff like that. And I just felt like, as literally, I think probably this is the first time I've ever felt this consciously, but like I felt as big as the universe. Like I was like, but there was no ego attached to it of like, oh, now I'm valid. Like, people like me. It was just this celebration of, I don't know, but I felt so expansive. And then they go, now picture the person who caused you the most harm is on stage presenting you the award. And immediately the person that popped up for me, and I just felt all that. I saw the person, and immediately that whole expansiveness, this crack, like just like in Stranger Things, this crack from above my head, and I'm laying down, so like went from above my head all the way in between my feet, like this almost like 6-inch crevice, and just all that energy, like that water, just started collapsing into it, all the way from top to bottom, like almost like two waterfall. Like if you just split a lake or something right down the center, and then just all the water just started collapsing in on both sides. And all that expansiveness just went in. And then I could feel my body go like this. And I went up, like I had to hold myself back. Now imagine, like, this is all in this meditation. It's in my brain, my subconscious, but I wanted to walk up and kind of take the award and just go, hey, thanks guys, it's not that big. And I wanted to discredit and say, it's not that big. I appreciate it, but it's not that. Like before, when I was just accepting of like, oh, cool, this is, yeah, like this is, it's like when I get up in the morning and I breathe, I don't like doubt. I don't go, oh my God, thank God there's air. Like I never doubted that there's air, right? So it was the same thing before. It was just like, oh yeah, like this is how it's supposed to be. And then all of a sudden it was like this apologizing for being there and being and trying to tell people, oh, don't celebrate me. And it was just this very interesting, like, oh my God, like look at the impact this person had on my life, to where in the one moment I can feel as big as the universe, and the next it just all collapses in, and I'm apologizing for being in the spotlight and things like that. And so that was, and then to see that on Stranger Things, I'm like, that's exactly what it felt like with this water collapsing. I'm like, holy shit, that's exactly what I felt.
Well, so, yeah. And it's interesting because there is the two versions of us. There is the false perceived separate version, the meat suit,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with the social security number and the address and all of that. And
The
then there
credit
is
score.
what a credit score.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or lack of.
Those are all the fun people. It's so funny because yeah, some of us have been all of the above. Like we've been all the way up there and down and
Yeah.
back up again and down. Anyways, and then there is the real us that is everyone and everything. And when you talk about expanding into your true identity in that sense of feeling that, you know, one of the things that I do when I do some of the healing work that I do is I ask people to take the problem like it's a rock and hold on to it and watch it get smaller and smaller so that it's the size of a
Mm.
petal. And then we're meant to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And as we expand, we begin to feel like our authentic self. We begin to feel like we are home. And so it is interesting the great chasm in between being our temporal human self and being our authentic, all-encompassing higher self. And it's interesting because this is actually an exercise of integrating both of them in a way as we're moving through this part of the process, it feels like.
So is that, because that reminds me of something I've done before where like you picture your problem and as like a photograph, and then you make it smaller and smaller and smaller, and then you take the color out of it to where it's a black and white photo that's like this big. You never, and then you like put it down in the corner. You never get rid of it, but you take away all its colors and size and everything to where it's just it will never go away fully, but it's so small that it's like a speck of sand on the beach. Like you forget about it, even though it exists. Is that like the same type of exercise with the pebble?
Yeah, because it's all about remembering that we are not this, and the
Right.
power doesn't come from this. It comes from who we truly are, and it's that
Well, but that's, you say that, and I sit there and I go, yeah, that makes sense. But our ego and our consciousness is so strong that, and until you, I don't know whether you do, like I did peyote once, and I saw like at one point I could see the digitalization of the world. Like I was like, oh shit, this is a computer generated thing. Like I could see it. I could see the person, and I could see the code, not like the matrix, but more like the lines of a grid, like code. But and at that moment, I was like, oh yeah, this isn't real, right? But then if we're not in a state of mind that's like something has separated the mind from the ego or the consciousness or whatever it is, like it's easy to say, oh yeah, this is, but the body, the mind, it's so strong that it's like
it. So
here's some.
what I know to be true is that, you know, even though those two things seem opposing or maybe different for sure, I know that we're meant to integrate both. I know that we're meant to integrate both. So we're meant to actually, in order to consciously create, we're meant to access our higher self.
Yeah.
And not to delegate that to the ego or I use the word linear mind.
But then wouldn't you say that the way to get to the, what did you just, higher self, like, because I'm like, this is clicking right now as we're talking about this, but it's like, to me, I've always thought the higher self, like I got to get up to the higher self, which is it's another destination. But the higher self is just who we are without the distortion from the trauma, from the belief system, from all the things that we've been taught to distort our full expression of ourselves. Right.
Well, that's part of it, but the higher self is so accessible. All you actually have to do is close your eyes and ask, who's observing the silence right now? Who observed being at a restaurant and ordering a sandwich?
Yeah,
Who,
I've
who,
done that. That doesn't work for me. Like personally, like it might work for some people. For me, I've done that, and it's just like, who's sitting here? I'm like, I am.
I don't
Like,
know.
you know,
Well, that's great, because the I am, the being that you are, the being that is aware, that is the higher self. And what's interesting, because I do hypnotherapy,
all right.
part the biggest part of my work when I do hypnotherapy is not only understanding, but working with the layers of awareness. And so it's interesting because, like, for example, when we're worried about something or we're afraid of an outcome that never happens, we're dealing with a level of awareness that actually doesn't know anything. And then when we actually are courageous enough to actually release that level, and there are different kinds of ways of where we can become aware, but the biggest key to it is peace. When we're at peace, we're in an expanded state. And when we're not, we're in a contracted state. But when we're in the expanded state, that expansion, we're in all that is, we're in our higher self. And all I'm saying, and so that you didn't, so that it doesn't sort of mistake being in the sandwich, and I've tried that before, where I was going with that is that there is such a subtle shift to actually being tapped into awareness that we miss it all the time. What I'm saying is that we are it.
Mm-hmm.
You and I are it right now, especially as we're participating in this. And it's interesting because we go up and up. And I'll share this with you because it might give you kind of that sort of visceral. Yesterday, when I went to work in Sedona, and of course I was in Sedona, and we were another intuitive energy healer came into my room, and we started having a conversation. And the next thing that I know, I became aware, because the content matter of the conversation was elevating and elevating. And then the next thing I know, I had this buzzing sense of expansion that I didn't even turn on. A monsoon, which we get this time of year because it comes up from the Gulf of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
It sends the hot air sends these beautiful monsoons up into Arizona. And so all of a sudden, this thunder, this lightning, and these huge raindrops start falling
Mm-hmm.
on the ceiling, and it's mesmerizing, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, the term mesmerizing comes from Mesmer, which is the guy that's behind understanding the higher consciousness, Dr. Mesmer. So it's mesmerizing, and all of a sudden I realized that I have actually I didn't travel to the layers that caused me to feel or believe that I'm separated from that higher dimension, melted away because they're illusory.
Mm.
And what happened was I was left with who I truly am, which is at a higher frequency. And I said, "Did you realize that we just did that?" She says, "Yes, sort of." So the conversation switched for me to speak because that was happening while I was listening to her.
Yeah.
What she said was actually very helpful for what I needed to know at this particular time. And so that knowingness went all the way up to some of the higher levels of my being. And so when I flipped it around, it was my turn. She says, "Oh my God, I just did that thing that you explained." But if you've noticed, if you've ever come into a sort of something and then suddenly you get mesmerized, you get into that expanded state, it's just that subtle shift, which is where you're in that higher self awareness that's actually operating 24/7.
Well, right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not something.
We're saying this. We're saying the same
Yeah,
thing.
it's not something you have to find, because in order to be, you already are it. But it's making that subtle shift and excusing the parts of it that limit it,
Right.
so that it can actually be.
Right. Yeah. That's what, and I'm saying it because it makes sense to me, but like our true self, and maybe we shouldn't even be calling it our higher self, or at least I don't think I will anymore, because
Authentic self.
Authentic, true self, because when I think of higher self, it's still almost like God. is like, and I'm sure that's where I because of growing up in a Christian upbringing, is like God's sitting up here on high looking down, and like I'm always below and never good enough, but like our authentic self is always present. Like I look at my nieces are great to see their journey, because, and even I had lunch with a buddy who just had a daughter who's brand new, like less than 6 months old. But we were talking about this, and it's just like, he was asking me about my opinion on something. And I was just like, well, look at your daughter, man. I'm like, she poops when she needs to poop. She, sleeps when she needs to sleep. She's hungry, whatever. Like that's like that right there is who we are. Everything beyond that is taught and learned, and it's dogma, it's ideology, it's everything else. Is like, oh, you're an American, you're white, you're wealthy, you're poor, like all these labels we start with.
520 FICO score.
you're yeah, you're not that good because your credit score is 525 or whatever it is. So, but yeah, like that's the core of us. But then, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's just the way we're designed. But we start, oh, mom, dad, car, sky, like we label things so we have a frame of reference. But whether it's trauma or beliefs, whatever it is, that's the distortion that gets in the way of the true self expressing itself fully, that we experience as thoughts, we experience as emotions. But that thing, like I've been in a funk, but again, it's just chemicals going through my brain, right? But if somebody came and said, here's $1 million in a movie star career, I'd have this, all of a sudden I wouldn't be in a bad mood and everything for a while, and then it would come back down. And it's like, oh, well, then is that even real? Right? Is that even true? So I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. And which is why, like, when I talk, like, understanding this is why I talk to actors. Like when we're looking at like characters and stuff like that, I know that the reason this guy kills people or this person destroys their perfect relationship and whatever in the story, it's because of their trauma. And so I go, okay, well then if I can figure out what the character's beliefs and trauma are, then I can fulfill their story, because it becomes the reality, right? So it's like, oh, well, how, what does it feel like to be loved? Well, it feels like this, and this. And you go through, like I do my whole thing. Who are they? How do you feel about them, and why? And we create all these relationships with things. And that's how we as actors put the disruptors in between to fulfill the character. But for me, it's like doing this whole thing every Saturday has been an exploration in and of itself, of going, I'm just going to do it without expectations, and not like, if people show up, if they don't show up, if people ask questions, if they don't ask questions. Like today I had I was like, I'm going to talk about a technique, because I've been talking about all this other stuff, and I want to actually give an acting technique. And then as I turned this on, I looked at my list of things that I wanted to talk about, and I go, no, I'm going to talk about this. This feels right. And then you started talking, and we just went into it, and I thought to myself, just let it go, man, and let this be it today. But it's, if anything, it's like everybody's damaged because of trauma, because it was passed down and things like that. But if we can clear those traumas, however, whether it's through tapping or subconscious, or or even just faith, if that's what people lean on, or whatever it is. But man, when I see, and I know we call it the sweet spot, we call it being in the zone, in the pocket, and all these other things. But when I see actors, including myself, but like really just get in the zone, and they're just so connected to their partner, and they're like,
Yes.
you're talking about, like, you forget about, like what you're talking about when you're in that conversation, you lose you lose connection of
Your false identity.
your false identity, because prior to that we're like, am I doing it right? Do people like me? And like, we're so worried about ourselves that we're not in the scene. And then when you get in that scene and you get in that pocket and you're just working and just having a conversation, and then the scene comes to an end, and then I go, how is that? And they're like, I don't know what just happened. And it's like, exactly, because you fully let go. And it's like, you were, for that moment, you set the identity of Brent Harvey to the side, and you just allowed the conversation and your freedom to happen, and your instincts, things that you couldn't even plan out prior to, like, oh, when I say that line, I'm going to do it like this. And you really let your full creative self come out and be free. And man, it's such a beautiful thing. And it's what we all, I feel, as artists strive for in anything, whether it's a writer, a painter, a musician, whatever, but like just being so free that the fullest expression of ourselves can come out. But that's also what I want to do in my life, of like, even in this whether it's this conversation or, making lunch or whatever it is like, removing all that stuff to be able to just know, like you said, this is it. I'm here. I'm now. And this is it. It's like what you're talking about when we first started the money thing. I got this from Kyle Cease. Boom. I got this from Kyle Cease, which is, he, when he talks about money or, or stress and things like that. But he's, he always says it to the people. He's like, people are like, I don't know if I quit my job, or, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay rent. And he goes, right at this moment, right now, do you have to make a decision? Do you have to make the decision whether you have to pay rent or not? Or do you have to make the decision whether to quit the job or not? And they're like, no. It's like, okay, then why are you worried about it? Because literally at this moment, you don't have to make that decision, or it's not happening. Are you right now, are you completely out of money and starving to death? No. All right. Then there's nothing you can do. Like, you're not even. And so ever since I remind myself of that, it puts me in the moment, because I start getting worried about, like, my brain goes into the future stuff, and I go, is that something I have to deal with right now? And I go, no, like, it's not even a problem yet. It could be a problem, right? But it's not even a problem yet. And I'm like, is that a decision I have to make right at this moment? Nope. All right. And then from that, and just from answering no, it releases me from all the stress of thinking that I have to figure it out right this second. And that's the same thing with acting, is like, when you fully let go and go, I've made up until this point, I've made my decisions of how I'm going to approach the scene and character choices and everything else. And now from here, I'm just going to let go and see where this thing goes, and not worry about the future, because I don't have to deal with, if the scene sucks. Does the scene suck right at this moment? No, because we haven't even started it yet. And you just step into it. It gives you the freedom to just be and explore and discover what your true self has to say, or how express itself. So
I dare you to use this to find the common theme, and to use this video anyway, like you would, because I feel like people will probably need what we were talking about today as a result of being, more expanded. But one of the things I would actually add to the conversation, because we talk about, whatever traumas that we carry from whatever experiences that we had. And because we actually are in an experience where having the situations that do traumatize us are part of it, or let's say part of what we signed up for. The one thing that I hold in my awareness, or hold in awareness, is the knowing that we also signed up for the traumas, because the traumas teach us. And then even when we carry the trauma throughout our life, it's expanding us there too. And then when we're done learning with it, which we all seem to be in this massive state of elevation, where we're done with certain traumas, where it's now time to release them. We release them when it's time. So we're, oddly as it might be, we may sign up for the bullying when we're a kid, and then we sign up for the hindrance that it creates in
Right.
our life
But
and
that,
how it expands us. And then all of a sudden we're done learning from it. Now, somehow or another, a healing modality shows up where we can finally release it. And now we're done learning with it.
all right, but that's going with the same school of thought that everything is happening in your favor, right? Because even though it's trauma and it feels painful, it's you, whether you chose it, if you believe in, well, we chose it prior to life experience, we chose our own parents and things like that, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening because it's there to push us to become the next version, or evolution of ourselves, or whatever it is. I know exactly how to find the through line for this video. Clear, there's two ways. One is helping people to release, show them ways to release the traumas, and to educate them on why it is why we date the same person, why we don't become successful in our creative careers, or financially and things like that, because of these blocks, because of these traumas and blocks. The other one is what's helped me the most as a creative is understanding the human consciousness and how our brain works, how we interpret reality, and how this, and all that. And if I understand that, and I know that, because my relationship to my mom and all these things that, good or bad, that happen, I love her for these reasons, I hate her for these reasons, or she irritates me for these reasons. And therefore, when my mom comes to me and says, honey, da, 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 it triggers me this way or triggers me that way. Same thing with my dad. Or if, I have a relationship to a cup, and it means something to me because somebody I loved gave it to me,
Mm-hmm.
and then my current partner breaks it, I respond this way. If I know that the relationships are what of my past are what affect my present, right? Then in real life, I can go back and I can address those and heal those, so I can live a different life. But in the creative world of being an actor and stepping into a script, I create the relationships that justify the scene I'm stepping into. To go, oh, he kicks her out, he breaks her heart, he shoots the person, he kills people, whatever. It's because of the same thing. Like the way we as human beings are made up, if you can understand that, you can heal as an individual, and you can use that to your benefit to step into character as an actor.
And don't be surprised if a character shows up that's part of your personal growth as well.
Well, and that's the thing.
And by the way, I just sent you something to your Instagram, which is a very interesting thing that has a relationship to our discussion. But I
Oh,
think
cool.
I mentioned Dolores Cannon to you. Do you know who Dolores Cannon is?
No.
Okay, well, this is you'd love her anyways. She is someone who about 40 years ago was doing hypnosis to help people stop smoking and stuff, and realized that in hypnosis, people accessed a level of consciousness where that part of us that's united, that you could call God. And so when she was able to do this, she wrote many books, and one of them several years ago was about the new earth and the ascension that we're experiencing right now, and like the waves of volunteers that are coming in from other dimensions, such as the angelic realms and other higher vibrating planets that have already been through this, that have come in incarnated as a body to be what we would call light workers or star seeds right now, to actually assist the planet through this period. But she wrote other things. She accessed Nostradamus through the fabric of time, and actually reinterpreted the quatrains. She actually did things about the convoluted universe, but she actually has sort of a foundation in which she explains who we are, what we're here, and it goes beyond that. But she explains us as being the actor, producer, and creator of our whole entire lives. And as an actor and a conscious traveler, you this little snippet that I just sent you, you will really love.
I'll look forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's I'll wrap it up here, but it's basically, you know, what you just said about, you know, as an artist, like wait till the content shows up for you to deal with your shit. It's like, I can't tell you how many times I've been working with an actor and they're doing a scene and there's so much resistance. And when I start, they're just like, this is what we do as actors. I do it tell them like, this is stupid. This writing sucks. Like, who wrote this? You know, this is just a stupid scene. I don't want to do it. It's, you know, and then when you get at the core of it, it's like, oh no, I was in a relationship like that where my heart was broken or whatever, and we don't want to deal with it. But it's like, no, lean into that. Like, that's a gift. And I'll tell you, as a veteran who, you know, I went to Iraq in 2003 and witnessed things, and I was lucky in so many ways, but you know, physically, you know, nothing really happened to me. I didn't get shot or blown up or anything like that. But the PTSD, like I had PTSD, and you know, because I mean, seeing things like that, you can't not. I mean, everybody, let's be honest, everybody has PTSD just from living life and from parents and school and all that other stuff. But you know, I had PTSD from war. But in, you know, I going to the VA and stuff like that, and they're like, do you need to see therapists and stuff like that? I was like, I don't think so, but like, I'll go just in case. But by then I'd already been in acting class and meditating, do all these other things. And they're just like, the therapist had nothing I was so far beyond them already. And I was like, they're like, well, how do you feel about this? And it's like, I'd already done these scenes in class, like Homeland scenes and scenes from shows or movies about situations that I went through. And I was able to creatively address them and release that trauma through a creative outlet. And it was such a therapeutic thing because it was a safe space to explore and talk about things in a way that, like, we as actors, we like to hide behind characters, like, you know, masks and things like. But it's like when people, I'm like, oh, do a funny accent and do it like, you know, The Rock would do it, and people just free up because they're like, oh, if people don't like me or they're laughing at me, or they're laughing at this character and not me. But when we just go in there and go, I'm going to do it like Brent, and people are like, it's like where our ego takes that hit. But because I was able to do it as a character, I was able to bypass my fear of vulnerability and all these other things to express that and heal. But yeah, man, it's I mean, art is so, just the expression. And you know, I'm trying, as I get older, I find myself with the young, you know, younger generations that are coming out, that I find myself going, what the hell are they doing? Like, that's music. And I'm like, I don't want, when I was younger as a kid, I hated that when the adults were like, oh, you know, they just judge it, like you and your music and da 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 and you jiggity 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 and stuff. I'm like, you're not even asking me how I feel about it or anything. You're just judging it. So I try not to I feel like it's just a natural occurrence that thing, you know, as we get older, you know, but I try to keep an open mind because it's just like, it may not make sense to you, but it's an expression. It's just an expression of, you know, and God, at least they're getting it off their chest and saying it rather than bottling it up and it just exploding or imploding in violence or, you know, whatever it is. Art is just, there's a lecture I listen to. It's like a chill step. It's like a mixture of lectures that somebody put together, but there's this one that comes in. I'll send it to you. I have to find it. It's on YouTube, but I think it's called like the Philosopher's Chill Step Volume 2 or something like that. But if anybody wants to look it up, but one of the lectures that fades in says, in Egyptian times, artists were considered the highest standard of society. But now we live in a society that condemns you for being an artist and criticizes you. And I was like, man, what if we were lived in a society that said, oh, you create you tell stories about, I mean, think about that. Like, isn't it interesting that we have TV shows and complete careers and industries built around going into the Egyptian, tunnels, or, we find caves with scratchings on them. And we're like, oh my God, we discovered, and look at what it tells us about our ancestors and everything. And that, like, we can, oh my God, that's such a big thing. But in real time, as you and I are creators, people are like, oh, you're an actor? There's a million of those. Oh, you're a writer? You're a director? Why don't you get a real job? It's like, we're the documentarians of human history, right? You watch films from the 70s, from the 60s, from the 50s, from the 40s. They are a reflection of what was happening. They're documentaries, even if they're not by definition documentaries. They are documentaries of where the world was, what the consciousness was, what was important to our society. And yet we are so discredited, which is why then we discredit ourselves. Because even when we're young, if we're like, I'm an artist, it's like, artists don't make money. Go be a doctor, go be a lawyer, be something valuable in society. It's like, yeah, doctors can fix you and keep you alive for, let's say, even 100 years, let's say 200 years. But this thing that I'm creating exists for all eternity, far beyond, or at least until it's just, it, like, the body's going to die. But this recording or this expression, whether it be a poem or whatever, not only, this is like a whole, but not only does it exist in its original form, but it exists in the ripples of influence throughout time. And we're so discredited as, if anything, bottom feeders in a sense of society, of like, oh, you're an artist, you don't provide value to society. But somebody on the stock market that is working with imaginary numbers and is at the top of the food chain. And I'm not judging that career either. It would be unfair of me to criticize another career if I don't like mine being criticized. But it's like they create a value in a sense, but I don't know, man. I just find it interesting, and which is like in my healing and what I'm going through of, healing my trauma and things like that, to really step into my own value, and accept value, like accept that I deserve it, because I can go out and work my ass off and be sabotaging it simultaneously. Like I can be shoveling the dirt and tossing it in front of me as I move forward and just piling it up and making it harder and harder and harder. And it's like, oh, Brent's working his ass off. Yeah, but Brent's not throwing the dirt behind him. He's throwing it in front of him, type thing. So you can be working your ass off and making it harder for yourself simultaneously, like sabotaging yourself at the same time. But I think a big part of that goes back to the shame that lies around in being an artist, of feeling, for me, I was a closeted actor for years, from when I was like 6 years old until about 22, 23 years old, when I finally was like, no, I'm an actor. This is what I'm going to go do. But even still, the trauma still lies there. But that's a big chunk of adolescence that I didn't express myself when I was at my most creative, out of shame, because society says this is valuable, that's not valuable. But like, I mean, people back in the day told, I think it was Picasso. Was it Picasso? Didn't sell a painting his entire lifetime until he died. I think it was Picasso. I could be wrong. It was either Picasso or who cut off their ear? Who cut off their ear? Was it Picasso? I think it was Picasso, but if I'm wrong. It's either Picasso or Monet or somebody like that, but they never sold a paint their entire life. They died without ever selling I think the only thing he sold to his brother or something, but then he died and all his paintings went to his brother, who put it in his attic, and then his brother died, and then his brother's wife, the widow, then started like to get rid of them, started selling them, and they just and became what we know today. But in his lifetime, he was told he wasn't valuable. But yet here we are now, millions of dollars per painting, right? So now it's valuable. So it wasn't valuable back then. Like it had no value then, but it has value now. Like, but look at the impact he's had in, you know, the ripple effect of what he created, how it influenced artists moving forward. And to say that that's not valuable, and you know, we look at the Mona Lisa. You can look at the Mona Lisa, and it tells you everything about that time period, right? The hairstyles, the clothing styles, the technology of the city, or just even technology of being able to create with those paints. But we discredit our artists today, and therefore then the artists discredit themselves and struggle so hard to tell authentic, great stories or expressions because we were told to be ashamed of what we naturally are. I don't know. That's just a whole rant, but man. And that's where our trauma lies. And that's what holds us back from success. You know, because there's people out there, I see people out there that they're not that talented, that are, you know, they don't work that hard, and shit just falls in their laps. I just saw this quick clip with Sylvester Stallone. He was doing an interview. He's like, I don't know where it came from, but I just always had this like belief that I was better than everybody else. Like, not, you know, and it's a bit of arrogance, but you have to watch the interview to see how he really articulates it. I'm not going to do it justice, but he's like, I just always believed I could do it, you know? And so I went and did it. And it's just a mindset thing. And he immediately, he's like, I'm not the best, you know. Dave Grohl says it all the time. He's like, I'm nowhere near the best drummer or singer or musician. He's like, I just started doing it. And just, you know, so anyways, anybody that's listening to this, you know, I know you're a creative, you're an artist in your own right, whatever that looks like, but you know, I think society, and maybe that's a big part of, you know, maybe that's a part of where we're shifting to, like you were talking about, Seph, about the transition of the new earth. Hopefully that means we're getting back to where an artist is considered the highest of society rather than the bottom of the barrel, you know? So I think only the entire world would benefit if everybody was like, oh, it's okay to be creative and express, and, you know, and the whole, you know, half the population could be actors, and that's cool because then we can make more projects and tell more stories, and which in telling stories, we explore humanity to understand ourselves, right? So anyways, I'll leave it with that. You got anything last before we wrap up? I want to give you your time back. This was amazing, man.
It's all about the love. It's all about the love and the light and the life force and just being in that. So that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. I couldn't connect to it.
Joanna says thank you. She can't. She has an Android from 1932, so it doesn't work. If any, yeah. So Seph, anybody wants to find you and like do any hypnosis or any work with you, or tarot card reading or stuff, like where could people find you?
Oh, that's my website's talktomyangels.com. But you know, I hope that I added value to the conversation, even though that wasn't the intention today. So,
but it's what was supposed to happen, right?
No, totally was.
That's the letting go. And what I've been learning of letting go, I'm just like, I know this is what I thought I wanted, but it's like, let's see where this takes us. I can still record what I wanted to, right? So yeah. There was no loss. I enjoyed it. It's if anything, it's what I need to.
Same,
and
yeah.
And it gave me great, because to hear you, I didn't have to talk for a full hour straight about, you know, it's great to have that stimulation, have that feedback, which I think the whole world needs more now too. Like, it's so polarized. People aren't listening to each other. It's like, I may not agree with you, but let's explain your side of it to me and
Yeah.
whatever. And it stimulates in the
Yeah,
conversation.
it's interesting because what I do is I help people expand in their consciousness, whether I'm doing a reading, a hypnotherapy session, or teaching people how to invoke their own intuition through a tarot class that I teach.
Mm,
So no matter what I do, my goal in every single one of those places is to help people raise consciousness.
mm.
And do I raise consciousness as a part of being a facilitator or teacher? Yes, that's
Yeah.
my goal to do it as for myself. But because I understand the relevance and importance of it, even as an actor and every layer, our world is a better place when every person raises consciousness. And like you said, we already have sort of like slots where this is this job and this job as a stockbroker,
Yeah.
you get to make millions of dollars, but this job as a teacher, you don't make much money or whatever. You have all these different slots that seem to be very skewed as to where they are. And so, when I offer the talent of being able to facilitate for others to raise consciousness, and by the way, even my goal as a filmmaker, my goal as an artist is to raise consciousness, whether I'm writing something or playing a character, is to raise consciousness. It's interesting because to us in a linear mind that lives in a linear society, we place at the bottom of priority, and yet it's the thing that we're here to do, is to raise consciousness and integrate with the higher self or the authentic self, if we like
Right.
using those words. But it's interesting because making a career out of facilitating the raising of consciousness, you wake up every day and you think, how am I going to do that? Yet people set appointments, or
Right.
they do a hypnotherapy session, or I do a reading for them, or whatever it is. And I'm like, oh, damn,
They're seeking you. They're seeking you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still get to support myself that way,
Yeah.
So, and in a way, that is not at all unlike being an actor or a creator, because when your goal is to do that and to integrate all this, and your actor's whole, which is like integration, everything is integrated.
Right.
For you personally, because I know you personally, it isn't just about the integration of being able to write, produce, and act. For you, you also integrate your conscious self in here as well, which is what you offer when you do this.
Right.
So, for those that are listening, yes, all of this is actually your journey forward in, being the full expression of who you want to be.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, brother. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Oh, you too. This great discussion. I love it.
I loved it, man. It's what I needed.
Yeah, cool. Bye, Joanna.
All right, everybody. So that was a impromptu thing with Seph Dietlin. Dietlin. I always mess that up. Dietlin from talktomyangels.com. He's an actor as well, but also intuitive and tarot card reader, and just amazing all around human being. So check him out. And Joanna over here on the side couch, lounging, kicking back, maxing, relaxing. I hope this helped and gave people some guidance, clarity, confidence. And if feel free to reach out to Seph, or if you have any questions or anything we talked about, or want to any more, this inspired any other questions or things you want us to discuss or me to discuss, reach out to me, actorshole@gmail.com. And until next time, everybody enjoy your week and be creative. The world needs more of it.